Then King T'Chaka the Black Panther woke T'Challa at 1 a.m. for a preemptive strike on a mercenary camp in the neighboring nation. T'Chaka said to his 10-year-old son, "The mercenaries are training fighters for the purpose of attacking Wakanda." "What is the motive for the attack?" asked T'Challa. "That country is of the belief that Wakanda annexed part of it centuries ago when their ancestors tried to invade us," replied T'Chaka. "So what if we took the land? We were the victors," said T'Challa. "Boy, Wakanda did not take the land. We only control foreign assets that are of strategic value, like people or the secret island colony in the Canadian region that has military significance to us. When you become king, be mindful of what you consider to be valuable to Wakanda in regards to the assets of other nations." "Yes, father," said T'Challa. Minutes later, T'Chaka wheeled a subterranean digger vehicle to the right and he headed upward. T'Challa watched the navigation computer screen that guided his father. "Get ready," said T'Chaka. T'Challa was instructed to reach the east of the camp and to notify his father on whatever he found there. T'Chaka armed himself with 2 curved swords. T'Challa was given a vibranium lance, compact able wrist shields and an assortment of grenades. The digger's controls switched over to T'Challa and its thrusters pushed the vehicle through the surface into the center of the camp, crushing the mercenary leader's tent in the process. T'Chaka launched himself through the sky roof that was above the cockpit. T'Challa wheeled the digger around and drove to the east, pushing through the war tanks and jeeps that were in the path. A guarded shed was at the edge of the camp. T'Challa followed his father's example and launched himself out of the sky roof. He threw gas grenades at the guards who had approached and used the lance to take out their legs. T'Challa opened the shed's locked door with an explosive and he discovered 2 blindfolded captives, a man and a woman, bounded on the ground, and they called out to him in French. He informed his father over his radio collar. "I am almost done here. I will be with you soon," said T'Chaka. T'Challa left the shed and he secured the digger. He heard shouts from the camp and then everything went quiet. The surrounding forest was still, then something moved silently in the darkness and it came swiftly at T'Challa. The Black Panther ran up to him and gave T'Challa the swords to hold. T'Challa was surprised by how weightless they were. T'Chaka entered the shed and spoke to the captives in French. Then he came out and talked with T'Challa. "The woman is a French noble, the man is a French spy, and they are married. They have an 8-year-old daughter," said T'Chaka. "Why are they here?" "He is working and she thought that he was having an extramarital affair. So we will release them," said T'Challa. "Boy, didn't you hear what I said? One is aristocracy and the other is a spy. So what are they to Wakanda now?" T'Challa reflected and then he replied, "They are now our foreign assets." "Precisely. They will work for Wakanda from this night on until they die," said T'Chaka. Chapter 1. T'Challa looked across at his daughter as she drew the attention of the South Africa Secret Service operatives in the market. Then T'Challa continued up the narrow alley steps and he caught the scent of guillotine. She was on the 3rd floor of the apartment building that T'Challa approached. T'Challa reached her room and entered. The windows were closed and thick curtains covered them. Guillotine's large mystical sword was on the table and she sat on a nearby chair. She had the features of her parents whom T'Challa had rescued in the shed. If she only knew that T'Chaka almost killed her parents when they tried to betray Wakanda, thought T'Challa. "I am alone and the apartment was chosen at random as you insisted," said Guillotine. "Johannesburg apartments are not cheap, so I don't want you to spend any more money in these spy games," said T'Challa. "Good, so I will get to the point. France cannot lose its sources of uranium. We are leaders in nuclear technology, and if our former African territories stop giving us first preference on uranium and other resources, it will undermine France's military power and its role on the United Nations Security Council. That is the message I was given to deliver to you," said Guillotine. From who? asked T'Challa. The President of France. He spoke to me in person. And if France does not get its way and the African nations break the French treaties, then I will have to assassinate Sobek since he is the one urging the nations on, replied Guillotine. T'Challa glanced at the sword and then he looked at Guillotine. How much does the French Secret Service know about us? asked T'Challa. Nobody knows that we slept together if that is what you are implying, replied Guillotine. But they suspect. I guess so. T'Challa sat on the edge of the table. Obviously they projected that Sobek will kill you, which would lure me into a showdown with him, said T'Challa. Nonsense, whispered the souls of the past users of the sword who resided in the skull hilt. The sword's comment was only meant for Guillotine's ears as she was the current owner, but it was overheard by T'Challa's hyper-hearing. I will not be sent alone to kill Sobek, said Guillotine. Then he will have more bodies of French assassins to display on the news channel. But would the Secret Service's plan work? Would you kill Sobek to avenge me? Asked Guillotine. What kind of a question is that? A simple one. I am indebted to serve my country if it means laying down my life for it. I will rather cripple the French Secret Service than to have you killed by Sobek, said T'Challa. Guillotine stood by him. Have you considered that France wants you dead as well because of what Wakanda learned through my parents? Asked Guillotine. Your parents being double agents for Wakanda is known only to us. Has there been a breach? My ex-fiancé might have uncovered something. He is a police detective after all. Meaning? He had access to the family house and he may have found secret documents. He said it in a rant when we broke up. What does your instinct say? Asked T'Challa. Behind the scenes an investigation might be open in the Secret Service to trace your involvement with my family while you were in France, replied Guillotine. T'Challa frowned because he realized what the French Secret Service was up to. This Sobek assassination attempt might just be a cover by the French Secret Service to get rid of you as payback for your father's treachery, said T'Challa. That is a big assumption, said Guillotine. Would the president be part of such a scheme? I doubt it. He just authorized what his Secret Service advised him to do, replied T'Challa. So I am lined up to be killed for my parents' sins, said Guillotine. Most likely, said T'Challa. I will deal with it. Guillotine rested a hand on T'Challa's shoulder. For the grief that Wakanda put my parents through, sometimes I would question why I did not take revenge out on you when you slept beside me, said Guillotine. Because you knew I was different. I will not let you die for the sake of Wakanda's past policies, said T'Challa. Should I stall the president on what your unofficial position is? Tell him that I will respond within 24 hours, replied T'Challa. Chapter 2 Then King T'Chaka carried Shuri in his arms as he walked with T'Challa in the palace grounds, 2 days after the mercenary camp scrimmage. Wakanda is immortal, but it is vulnerable to the schemes of outsiders. We must take steps to know as much as we can about current and potential foes. Information from the outside world is the resource that we must not run out of, said T'Chaka. Yes, father, said T'Challa. You will accompany me to France to assist in setting up the new spies. What will I be doing in the meantime? Asked Shuri. Training to become the Black Panther, replied T'Chaka. Can I learn French like T'Challa? Asked Shuri. Of course, replied T'Chaka. T'Challa was whisked away to France on a military plane the following day. The plane entered the country undetected and it went to the noblewoman's estate. T'Challa was given a script to follow with his conversation with the noblewoman. She sat on a bench while watching her daughter play in the garden. An invisibility-cloaked T'Challa came up to the woman. Have you forgotten your pledge to Wakanda? Asked T'Challa. The woman was startled. "Don't cause a scene. We have your home surrounded," said T'Challa. "You sound like a child," said the woman. "Remember this name Montfin. You will place him on the guest lists for all your socialite gatherings. You will introduce him to all politicians, officials, and financiers," said T'Challa. "Can't I pay you off?" asked the woman. "No, and my daughter, leave her out of this," said the woman. "Wakanda has no interest in your daughter," said T'Challa. He left and returned to his father. Then they waited for the woman to call her husband on the phone. She explained the encounter and he said something strange about having to use a blood sword once again. T'Chaka traced the location of the husband and flew the plane there. The husband left the corporate building that he worked from. He went to a nearby chapel. T'Chaka and T'Challa in their invisibility cloaks followed him inside. In the catacombs below the chapel was a large sword that stood in the middle of rodent bones. The husband reluctantly took the sword and whispered like he was having a conversation with the object. T'Chaka must have heard something because he pushed T'Challa to the ground just as the husband turned and hurled the sword at the Black Panther. T'Challa looked up at his decloaked father and T'Chaka held the sword's handle. The Black Panther's vibranium mask had been pierced on the side by the massive blade. The husband fired his gun at the Black Panther and T'Chaka knocked him down. "I can hear the bloodlust of the sword also," said T'Chaka. "You should not have gone to my daughter," said the husband. "Be quiet. Your daughter still has parents thanks to Wakanda." "Stand up," said T'Chaka. The husband grudgingly obeyed. "In your darkest hour you made a deal with Wakanda to save your wife and I am here to make sure that you follow through. Failure or betrayal will result in erasing your family. In the Lion Cemetery there is special gravestone that you will start to visit once a month. The bouquet of flowers that you rest there will contain schematics of the French Secret Service building, daily operations, procedures, codes, personnel, etc., said T'Chaka. Chapter 3 How did you become friends with the daughter? Asked Chimera. By accident. After your grandfather was killed and years later when I became king at 20, I came to France to inspect the Wakandan spy operations. I visited the gravestone in Lyon and met Guillotine there. Her mother had confessed to her on the deathbed and the father had perished in a mystical rite that was supposed to prevent his soul from being trapped in the blood sword. We later did some vigilante jobs in Paris, replied T'Challa. So you told her everything? No. She does not know everything, replied T'Challa. I will take that as another pointer in your lessons on how to be 3 steps ahead. See how much I am learning from you, said Chimera. T'Challa grinned under his Black Panther mask. He and his teenage daughter from the future observed the home of the French Secret Service chief late in the night. Chimera used her mutant beast master gift to take control of the guard dogs on the outside grounds and the cat that lived inside. The cat searched the house until it found the chief reading a document on his laptop. The chief took up the cat and put it in his lap. Chimera through the cat's eyes read all the passwords that were used by the chief and the files that he looked at which were linked to the Secret Service main server. As fast Chimera related the information to T'Challa, he used his Kimoyo to enter the server and he found the memo from the African Affairs desk requesting a retroactive investigation into a dead spy's alleged double agent activities because his daughter, who was a freelance asset for the Secret Service, might be in the same operation. The memo was signed by Puet. T'Challa remembered that Guillotine's father had mentioned to T'Chaka that Puet might suspect the spy leaks. T'Chaka said that Wakanda would ensure that Puet knew nothing. T'Challa speculated that Guillotine's ex-fiancé contacted Puet and that caused the old man to go through the records on Guillotine's father. T'Challa and by extension Wakanda's association with Guillotine was probably used as justification to pursue the investigation. The easiest thing for the Secret Service to do in order to clean its house was to have Guillotine killed off on an unsanctioned mission. The French president had the power to prevent the Soberg mission, but he would need an incentive to do so. T'Challa pondered about what Soberg really wanted from a war with France. Soberg already had the adoration of Africa. How would aggravating France in particular benefit him when he could have gone after the US and China? The war, mused T'Challa. Dad, said Chimera. Yes. Are you okay? We are finished here, said T'Challa. His time-space computers teleport Chimera and him into the office of the French president. The Black Panther took a writing pad from the desk and wrote, "Do not attack Soberg. It is a trap." His goal is to have France removed from the United Nations Security Council through a special vote by the US, Russia, China and himself. T'Challa signed as the writer, then he left for Wakanda. After he arrived, Chimera asked him why would Soberg want France removed from the Security Council? To make room for another powerful military nation to join, replied T'Challa. But which nation and how can you be sure? Soberg is considered a great man by the majority of the planet except in Wakanda because we know the truth about him. But there is one other place that his greatness has not touched, and I believe that he seeks to correct that by bringing them to the Security Council. What is this place? Asked Chimera. Atlantis, replied T'Challa. Chapter 4. Then T'Challa noticed that the bouquet of flowers on the gravestone had a faint trace of perfume, and that shouldn't have been. He scanned the lion cemetery with his hypervision and hypersmell. They revealed that someone observed him from the crypt that was not far from where he stood. A young woman with a guitar case slung over her shoulder walked from the crypt over to him. "Good afternoon," she said. Whatever was in the case was not a musical instrument because T'Challa sensed blood and mysticism. "Are you a relative?" the young woman asked T'Challa while she pointed at the grave. "Sort of," replied T'Challa. "Hi. I am Guillotine." "I am Luke Charles," said T'Challa. They shook hands. "My father came here every month and he bought the same flowers from the same shop that is just up the road from here," said Guillotine. "Okay," said T'Challa. "Are you from the African territories like Gabon?" "No, I am from an East African nation that you probably never heard of," replied T'Challa. "Is it Wakanda?" She took a step closer to him and stared into his eyes. "My parents worked for Wakanda until they died." "Did you know that?" she asked. "I think you should walk away," said T'Challa. "Is that a threat?" asked Guillotine. "It is a counter-proposal in case you want to blackmail Wakanda. My parents betrayed France for your country. I want to know if the secrets they handed over were used for good or bad." "They were used for good," replied T'Challa. She half smiled and said, "I believe you. But it was still wrong for your country to put my family through that ordeal." She walked away and then turned around. "I noticed that you walked into the cemetery. Do you need a ride?" "I am going to Paris." "I accept since I am heading to Paris as well," said T'Challa. His invisible Wakanda warjet that was directly overhead followed him as he walked with Guillotine to her car. "Are you the boy who spoke to my mother?" "Yes," replied T'Challa. "You are the reason that I was banned from playing in the garden." "I see. We have so much to talk about," said Guillotine.